Welcome back. This is episode 2 for rewiring your Jeep. Start off in this episode with reinstalling the rewired dash. The turn signal mechanism is a SignalStat 900. And as you can see here, the cast body was a bit dull. The unit has 2 covers, so a total of 4 screws. Did a little buffing with the buffing wheel, and then I cleaned it up with some ultrafine polish and some microfiber towels. Made the unit look a lot better. Still a little aged looking, but wasn't as dull as it was before. With the unit open, you can see there's only 4 wires total in this unit at this time. One of the wires actually is for the indicator light. So I needed to go and diagnose which wire was doing what and what the other contacts were for. So I started out, after doing a little bit of research, I found that this wire here with the purple wire connected to it is actually to activate the brake light. So at 12 volts to the unit and the arm turned to the left, we should have a left front blinker, which we do. Now here's our temporary tail light, so we're going to make a connection to the next point, and it should be blinking, which it is. And then switching it to the opposite side should be a solid brake, which we also have. So when I originally started with this, I simply had 4 wires. We had one that was the indicator light, which is on the opposite side. And then it had these 3 that were connected, which didn't make any sense to me. But after doing some research and some testing, I found what we need to make this operate properly. So let's just go down in line. This top bar, the wire that's on here, this is the turn signal fuse. So this is going to go to the blinker. The wires on this side are turn signal for the left. Wires on this side are turn signals for the right. The ones that are most inboard, these are for front and these are for rear. And your last wire here, this is going to be for the brakes. I had to go through and add extra wires. You may not end up being in this case, so I had to run new wires in here. Everything is running through this. So this is set up for a GM style column. So all your turn signals, ignition, everything runs through the column. So I had to go down and break everything out. So with the SignalStat, you're actually going to use this orange wire that is labeled as brake switch power. Actually, I think it's, yes. This does not go to a hot source. This is actually going to one side of your switch. So this is providing heat to that switch. This is the return. So this is going to be, both of these are going to be connected to your brake light switch. What's going to be coming to activate your brake lights is this setup. It is a white wire and an orange wire. The orange wire you do not need. That is for a 3rd level brake light. Though I'm keeping it on and running it to the back and tying it off just in case it's something I'm going to use like with trailer lights or something like that. Uncertain yet, but I'm just not going to cut it. But this is going to go to activate the brakes. And for your SignalStat, in here I have it as a purple wire, but it's actually this connection right here. So on this bar. Onto the charging system. Here you can see the alternator. It's a Motorola unit along with the regulator. Unfortunately, the previous owner did quite a hack job on it. As you can see, plenty of wire nuts and cables and electrical tape. I had to unravel this because they used red wires for all connections on this regulator. In the end, I wound up not using it as I couldn't get it to function. So I wound up using a unit that I had laying around in the shop that actually is for 64 Impala. And to simplify the connections, these were just some plugins that I found in an old harness from a 87 Caprice I just happened to have laying around the shop. And in the end, I think it made a nice, clean connection here. Used some heat shrink tape to bind it all together. So let's make the connection for the exciter wire, and I'm going to make a test here and see if we have a working charging system. Here you can see the back side of the alternator with the that harness connected. So I want to talk a little bit about the easy wiring harness and hooking it up to an older Willys Jeep. So this particular kit works out well with the Willys Jeep, but there's a few things that you're going to want to know. One, the book that comes with it is actually very helpful. This helped me to figure out where my connections needed to be to help to diagnose exactly how things needed to go. Example with the dimmer switch, the Jeep dimmer switch, the plug is not going to work, and what I wound up doing here is I have it reversed, and then I have a jumper wire coming across to connect to that lower one. That's actually the power side. So the one in blue is actually the power to the dimmer switch, and then these are the feeds going back out to the lights. And I think one of these feeds is actually the headlight indicator then as well, so in your dash. But that was my solution. Rather than redoing the plug because it was offset, it wouldn't fit, so I just used a jumper. So here's the other thing with the easy wire kit. This is the exciter switch or wire for the alternator. Now I had a setup that's probably going to be completely different than what you have. Previous owner had a Motorola regulator as well as a Motorola alternator, so it took me a while to figure out what wire was which on that. But in order to excite that, I wound up using an aftermarket regulator that was for 64 Impala. That's just happened to be what I had sitting around. This worked out just fine, but in order to excite it, I have it on, I think it was number 4 that's listed on there. But in order to get power to this exciter wire, and this is what was frustrating me for a while, was you have to have the accessory power connected to your key switch. Now I just had to temporarily jump to a wire that was hot, but this has to be hot in order to run the exciter. So if you have this hooked to your accessory, you're going to be fine. So that's not an issue, but just important to know that you need to do that. Back to the book that they provide you from Easy Wiring. Another area that I found very useful, that all the light section for the headlights and tail lights, all pretty explanatory. All the wires, it is printed on here. These wires is color-coded and it is printed saying what it is. But also what really helped me was having right down here, this is a complete breakdown, because again, this is set up for a GM column, so it's by color. So it's telling you the GM color and what wire that they had it set up as. So, and it's telling you exactly what it is. So sometimes it was hard to find on the wire what was marked. So I was able to quickly diagnose it by color wire. Then I went back through and I literally had to make a notepad telling me which wire that was in the harness to what wire was going to be in the signal stat, so that way I didn't get anything confused. There are other diagrams, so if by chance you're going to be using a different system, a different regulator from a different brand, you have that possibility. Of course, Motorola wasn't in here, but again, that was good to have. Absolutely, you can use this for the Willys. My mounting point was center, and I did that simply because I thought that would be the easiest place to get because there's not a lot of room in these. I figured I can always flip the seat if I had to crawl up under there and get to things. Now that all the circuits have been tested, the next step will be to shorten up these wires and make our final connections. There will be plenty of soldering, wrestling with all the wire and cleaning up under the hood, and making final connections.